Welcome back to another episode of Screen Tested. Today we have another lightsaber episode in store. With May the 4th just a couple of days away, I thought it was the perfect opportunity to talk about what I consider to be the best, most powerful, most deadly lightsaber in the Star Wars universe for a whole host of different reasons. Essentially, if I was in the Star Wars universe and I was a Jedi or Sith, this is what I would choose, and that is a double-bladed lightsaber. Now, the reason why I wanted to do today's episode is because recently we've done a lot of lightsaber episodes that I would consider to be a little bit more critical, right? We did obviously the history of the lightsaber, you know, talking about the original designs, how practical they are, and that was a whole bunch of fun. Then we talked about how to improve the lightsaber designs, make them a little bit more practical, and a little bit more, I would say, dual-focused. And then most recently, we obviously talked about some of the lore behind the lightsaber, and we were a little bit more negative than usual. So for today's episode, I wanted to talk about some of the positive aspects of lightsabers, specifically why this configuration would be absolutely the best. Now, what originally gave me the idea to do this episode was actually the twin blade episode. We did that a long time ago at this point. We made a full battle-ready double-bladed sword, and it was a very interesting episode, very nuanced and very contextually based, I would say. But one of the key takeaways that we had from that episode is, in a practical sense, there is a lot of downsides, you know, manufacturing costs, actually being able to travel with it, properly moving it around your body and how, you know, its movement can flow. A lot of those things that are kind of detriments. But what it left me thinking is that, yeah, I probably wouldn't want a twin-bladed sword. It's not something that I think I would choose. But if you translated that to a lightsaber where there's a lot more different dynamics at play, you know, weightless blades, things that can turn off and on, all of a sudden, I think it's really, really cool. So with that out of the way, let's talk about why this particular lightsaber design is kind of the best. So just before we actually spin this saber around, I thought I should tell you, this one is from Sabers. I've been working with them from the last couple of years. I mean, if you check any of the lightsaber episodes, I'm usually using one of the Saber sabers. Say that 10 times fast. But the reason why I wanted to actually shout out this one specific, they're having like a sale at time of recording, so I wanted to get it out as quick as possible, obviously, so you guys have a chance, if you're in the market, to grab one of these things. I'm really happy with the quality of this maul. It's the perfect size. It's got the right thickness. It's not too thick. It fits in the hand perfectly, and it's really nicely weighted in terms of just how much weight I would want for this particular thing. And of course, when you pick up one of these sabers, it comes with everything you need to obviously charge it and maintain it, things like your charging cord, extra screws, and you know, little bits that you might need to put your saber together, and of course a stand. So if you want to pick one of these up, or something like the Qui-Gon, obviously it pairs well with the maul, that's why I brought it out. There'll be a link down below. I recommend Sabers. They do some good stuff, and I haven't been disappointed with any of their sabers at this point. So with that being said, let's get back to today's episode. This thing is absolutely awesome. Let's talk a little bit about what makes it the best lightsaber, at least in my opinion, right? Let's start off with what I would consider to be the easiest place to start with, and that is the fact that you don't actually have to use it as a double-bladed lightsaber. You can just use it as a regular single-bladed lightsaber, but you have a whole lot more leverage because you have 2 points of contact that are a lot further from one another, in the same sort of fashion when I would use something like a greatsword, right? Having that longer handle length means that you're able to put a lot more power into your strikes, and you have a lot more structure, which means that somebody who's holding just a regular lightsaber hilt that is obviously half the size, essentially, it means that you're going to be able to actually overpower and muscle their strikes a lot easier. So I would consider that to be the first place to start. A double-bladed lightsaber you can just use as a regular single-blade lightsaber, but you have a lot more leverage, and it doesn't actually interfere with how you use the saber. You might think, well, because it's longer, it's harder to actually move around and actually maneuver. No, not at all. It still handles pretty much exactly the same as a regular single-bladed lightsaber, just with a slightly, obviously, longer, I would say, distance between your grip. Then obviously, at any moment during the fight or the duel, if you wanted to, you can activate that second blade, and all of a sudden, you become far more deadly because now you have two blades swinging around. Now, this particular maul, obviously because it is a replica in the original, the original Phantom Menace episode, it didn't split in half, but you can obviously split these things in half and dual wield them. This is where you get into the caveats of how ridiculously OP this sort of configuration would be. You essentially have three different lightsaber modes. Regular single-bladed lightsaber like everybody else has, you can dual wield the lightsabers, or you can stick them together and have a lot more leverage and have the double-bladed aspect. And it is worth noting the dual wielding aspect becomes a lot more feasible with a full-size blade because of the weightless nature of the lightsaber. But again, you can actually adjust the lightsaber, lengths in canon, so you could actually make one of the blades a little bit shorter than the other, kind of like a parrying dagger short sword situation. If you're enjoying today's episode, you should really consider subscribing. I mean, I have a saw shield. I mean, I have a twin blade here. But if a twin blade isn't enough, I also have a trident. This is the type of content I do, along with giant swords and a whole host of other stuff. So if you like these sorts of things, you should consider subscribing. I don't know how the lighting looks because it might look a little bit blown out because obviously these lights are quite bright. So that's three different types of blade configurations, all stemming from just this one type of lightsaber. And that doesn't even include different ways of using them, whether you're going to activate a blade, very suddenly to catch someone off guard, things like that. Now, when it comes in terms of carrying it, because these blades don't have any mass or weight to them, it means they're not really like a regular twin blade, which is one of the biggest issues we had with the twin blade. Because there's so much weight and material there, they're really hard to carry around, to manufacture, and they don't really give you any extra reach as compared to other weapons, right? But because lightsabers don't have any mass behind them, it's just the hilt itself, the only weight that you're going to be carrying is essentially just two lightsaber hilts, which is a lot more feasible and a lot more practical than obviously the twin blade. You have a lot more flexibility, and in combat, when you have the ability to choose how you want to engage with different scenarios, right? Something like this becomes a lot better. For example, think about different situations. You're in a corridor, you can't activate both blades. Well, guess what? You can just use it in a regular single blade configuration, and then you can use it in an enclosed space. Whereas something like obviously a real twin blade, you don't really have that option. Now, there is a particular honorable mention that I do want to bring up, and that is XR Kun's lightsaber. Now, to the best of my knowledge, he had a double-bladed, single-handed lightsaber. So instead of having this big long hilt here where you're able to get all that leverage and all that extra kind of distance between your hands, right? It was just a singular lightsaber that had another blade coming out of it. The reason why I think this would actually be really terrible to use is leverage, essentially. Actually using a single bladed lightsaber, you would essentially end up reverse gripping stuff a lot more, and all of a sudden you don't have enough structure here to actually block and attack and defend, and it's also easier to hit yourself. So I think you guys get the idea. There is a lot, and I mean a lot of positives here, and not really many downsides. That's the thing, is that I can't really come up with any arguments against the double-bladed lightsaber, why I wouldn't carry it around personally. I mean, it's really good. You don't really have to worry about edge alignment. It's not going to have as much weight because obviously it's a lightsaber and not a sword. There is just so many positives here that I just don't think that there is another lightsaber that is as good. Simple as that. Are there any downsides? Well, this is where it gets interesting, because a lot of the downsides, if we want to call them that, are usually kind of like specific to this particular saber. For example, if we looked at something like Cal Kestis's double-bladed lightsaber from the Jedi Fallen Order games, they don't really have any of them. They're a double-bladed lightsaber that can split in half and all those sorts of things, and essentially all of the downsides evaporate. But because MAULS lightsaber, at least to my knowledge, the original variant, things like the one that I've got here, didn't split in half. It was a solid lightsaber, and it wasn't until Obi-Wan actually cut it in half, where he obviously, took one of those sabers and then put a different one on, etc., etc. You would want your lightsaber 100% to be able to split in half, whether that's a quick disconnect method or a unscrewing method like this one actually has. I think that is far better. Now, there is some nuance here, because obviously if you have a lightsaber that is one singular piece that has two separate blades, it means that one of the positives, at least that I can think of, is that you could put all of the control buttons on one side, so it would be a lot easier to activate and deactivate both blades without having to worry too much much about it, but again, that's kind of stretching it. Generally speaking, having two separate lightsabers that have a coupler that joins them in the middle, like this exact one does here, would be far better, because obviously then, you know, you don't have to have one singular power source. You can have two separate power sources. So if one goes, you know, one battery dies, you've got to back up one. But even if we couldn't, even if these double-bladed lightsabers were singular, there's still a lot more positives, and I still think that I would choose it over a standard single-bladed lightsaber, simply because you get more leverage, like I mentioned. It also means that you can activate it at will and try and catch people off guard or by surprise, things like that. And essentially, if one side gets damaged, you still have another side. So I still think, even with the downside, if it couldn't split in half, it's still really, really good, and it's still better than most other lightsaber kind of, you know, variations, I would say. But with that being said, I think that's all for today's episode. This thing is awesome. I'm actually really happy. I've been wanting to get one of these for a long, long time. I've always had a singular MAUL, but I've never had both of them together. So I'm actually really happy now that I have a full double-bladed lightsaber. If you guys want to pick one up, check out N-Sabers down below. I'm really happy with this. It actually might be one of I don't know, it's not my favorite design, right? Because my favorite design is my original Graflex. That thing is incredible. But in terms of like practicality, I'm super into it. It's so cool. I remember originally watching The Phantom Menace, and when you know, Maul lights up his lightsaber for that first time, it's just so cool, right? I hope everybody's enjoying the new show. I haven't had a chance to watch it. I've heard positive things for the most part, but I think that's going to be all for today's episode, guys. I genuinely hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you think that there is a better lightsaber configuration down below, and why. This one just has so much versatility. There's so many different ways that you can use it, and so many different ways that it would just be so lethal that I really just can't conceive of a different lightsaber, you know, kind of style or design that would be better than this. But let me know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something that I haven't considered. I know some people might bring up XR Kuns, like I mentioned earlier, but the truth is, obviously having that single lightsaber hilt, you just don't have enough leverage, you don't have enough force, especially on that second blade. So I just don't think it compares at all, especially to something like this with this longer hilt, more leverage, more power, more structure. Anyway, that's going to be all. Thank you guys for watching. As always, I'll see you next week in another episode. Have a good one.